Coming up, the Grand Forks Police Department is conducting an investigation into shots fired outside an apartment building. And one person dies and 3 others were injured in a rear-end crash near Tower City. Plus, a group of young mushers got their chance to race for glory. Valley News Live at 10 is next.
This is Valley News Live at 10.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Larson. The Grand Forks Police Department is investigating shots fired outside an apartment complex early this morning. Officers were called to 1215 North 39th Street just after 2 a.m. for the report of multiple gunshots heard in the area. When officers arrived, no suspect or victim was found. Police searched the neighborhood and later found several shell casings outside an apartment building at 1111 North 39th Street. The investigation is ongoing. If anyone has any information regarding this case, you are asked to call the Grand Forks Police Department at 701-787-8000. A Bismarck woman was killed last night after the SUV she was riding in crashed into an unoccupied tow truck. It was stopped on I-94 near Tower City. Authorities say the tow truck experienced a mechanical issue and stopped in the right lane of the interstate. The driver called for assistance from another tow truck but got a ride, leaving his tow truck where it had stopped. An SUV traveling on the interstate then struck the back of the tow truck, pushing both vehicles into a ditch. The 43-year-old Bismarck woman died on the scene. The driver, a 42-year-old man, and 2 juvenile passengers were seriously hurt and are in critical condition. They were taken to a local hospital in Fargo. The crash and possible charges against the tow truck driver are still under investigation. Early this morning, the Valley City Fire Department responded to a fire at a home on 2nd Street near 9th Avenue. City officials say fire crews spent more than 14 hours putting out hot spots and investigating the fire. In this picture, you can see the home had frozen over from the water used to put it out. Fire officials are continuing to investigate the cause of the blaze. It's unclear if anyone was hurt. A Fargo man is urging people to consider checking over their fast food items after he found a piece of hardware in his taco. He shared with me his concerns.
I knew it wasn't food. It couldn't have been.
Michael Bingham and his girlfriend ordered lunch from Taco Bell on South University. When they started to eat, Bingham noticed something in his taco that definitely wasn't supposed to be there.
Tried to dig out what it was, and then I pulled it out, and it was this little tiny bolt or screw or something.
Scared there might be more, he started checking the rest of their food. Thankfully, he didn't find any.
Well, I thought I hurt myself, and I was just kind of in shock at the moment, I guess.
Bingham called the restaurant to tell them what happened. The employee he talked to called the general manager.
He said that the GM didn't believe me, and she thought that I was lying.
Wanting to make it right, the employee offered a refund and coupons to use on his next visit.
Yeah, I don't plan on it, really. I didn't really expect much. I mean, if I would have gotten hurt or something, then I would have expected a little more.
Bingham says he can only imagine if this situation happened to a kid.
That could easily happen again if it happened to me. I just want people to be aware of it, that can happen in restaurants pretty easily, I guess. They should definitely be more careful of checking.
We reached out to the restaurant, but they declined to comment. If you need help with an issue in your community, you can call our whistleblower hotline at the number on your screen. It's 701-369-3187. Leave your tip and we'll do our best to get to the bottom of it. As COVID numbers skyrocket in North Dakota, attention is being put on long-term care facilities to see how they're managing. As of Thursday, more than 750 long-term care residents and staff have COVID. Most of those are staff. A year ago, about 880 people in long-term care facilities had died from COVID. In the year since, fewer people have died, which officials attribute to the vaccine.
We've seen very few deaths since the emergence of the vaccine. The vaccine has literally saved our lives. Many residents are alive today because of the vaccine. North Dakota also is very proud to have the highest booster rate for nursing homes of any state in the nation, and that is absolutely making a difference.
Staffing shortages continue in long-term care facilities. On Monday, the North Dakota Department of Health created new incentives to attract people to work as CNAs and nurse aides. The program will pay them an additional $2,000 to work in long-term care. Today, Dr. Scott Gottlieb shared how soon younger children could have access to a COVID-19 vaccine. And he says the reconsideration of the timeline for the vaccine by regulators is based on giving kids the best protection to reach immunity.
I think even if the FDA were to reconsider the approval of the vaccine, you're looking at a timeline when this would get pushed at best perhaps into late March, because you'd have to re-adjudicate the data, have an AdCom, get the vaccine out into the supply chain. By the time that happens, I think you're looking at a March date, maybe late March.
Gottlieb says Pfizer and the FDA are looking very closely to the data to see if they can make a decision around this. Beijing Olympics organizers said today they have confirmed 72 cases of COVID among more than 2,500 games-related personnel entering China between January 4th and yesterday, with no cases among 171 athletes and team officials arriving in that same period. Final preparations are taking place for the Winter Games amid a global surge in cases of the highly infectious Omicron coronavirus variant. The games are set to take place next month inside a closed-loop bubble that separates all event personnel from the public. 39 of the COVID cases were found in testing at the airport and 33 inside of the loop. Thousands descended upon Washington, D.C.'s National Mall today for a rally against COVID-19 mandates. Many of those attending are people who oppose vaccine mandates, vaccines for children, and other pandemic requirements and restrictions. More than 20,000 people were expected. Some say the event adds to the influence of activists who continue to find ways to spread false and misleading claims about the COVID vaccines. The United States doubles down on its warning to President Vladimir Putin. Secretary of State Antony Blinken vows a severe response if Russia invades Ukraine. John Lawrence reports.
The lines of communication remain open between the White House and the Kremlin, and all options are on the table.
Even as we engage in diplomacy and dialogue, something that I do for a living, it doesn't take the word no out of your vocabulary.
Tens of thousands of Russian troops are on the border with Ukraine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says if a single additional Russian force enters Ukraine in an aggressive way, action will be taken by the U.S. and its allies.
We're looking at every single scenario, preparing for every single one.
NATO members have responded by sending military equipment and weaponry to Ukraine. Meanwhile, back in Washington, members of both parties agree Moscow should be penalized.
We do need to go ahead and impose sanctions on Russia now. We need to show them that we mean business, and we will be there for Ukraine should they invade. Once an invasion happens, lives are lost. You can't go back from that.
We should take up and pass a bipartisan bill that will show resolve and determination and apply some sanctions now. But the very strongest sanctions, the sorts of sanctions that we use to bring Iran to the table, is something that we should hold out as a deterrent.
And both parties are still hoping cooler heads will prevail. I'm John Lawrence reporting.
This weekend, Ukraine has received a second weapon supply shipment from the United States. More than 80 tons of weapons arrived in the country. The first shipment of security assistance from the U.S. arrived in Ukraine on Friday. The shipments come as the U.S. seeks to de-escalate the situation at the Ukrainian border. Pope Francis is calling for a day of peace to be held on Wednesday over his concern about the growing tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Pope Francis tweeted today saying, quote, "I am following with concern the increase of tensions that threaten to inflict a new blow to peace in Ukraine and call into question the security of the European continent." Later on Valley News Live at 10, some young mushers race to glory ahead of this year's John Bear Grease Marathon. But up next, Summer is in with details on this week's forecast.